Solving quadratic inequalities. There's two types of quadratic inequalities that we can be working with here, okay? That we can not only solve but also graph. So keep in mind that when we're solving quadratic inequalities, it will always have a graph. Now, depending on what type of inequality is, will depend on what type of graph you have, okay? So the first thing I want to talk about is the two different types of inequalities. Here's one example. Here's one example. What's the difference? One has y and one doesn't. It's pretty plain, isn't it? Pretty obvious? Okay? So if we're looking at that part, then how are we going to fill in this top one? Number of variables. How many variables does this one have? 2. How many variables does this one have? 1. Now, for the record, if we were in English class and writing a paper, would we write that number? What would we write? TWO. And why is that? It's less than 10. Okay? So what would we write for this one? ONE. Does it hurt for us to talk about English stuff in math class? No. There's no blood. I see no blood. Okay? Nature of solutions. If we have two variables, then the solutions are going to be the ordered pair, which looks like x comma y, that make the inequality true. Okay? Any questions about that? We have two variables. Our solution needs to have two variables. If we have one variable, the solutions are the of what? What are we solving for? X. So they're the values of x that make the inequality true. Okay? If we have two variables, the graph of the solution is a, if I can spell it correctly, a shaded region. That's an A, I promise. A shaded region bounded by the graph of the related function. Okay? So if we only have one variable, then the graph of the solution is a set of x values, all the x's, bounded by the roots of the related equation. I am going to add one more word to this part of the thing we're filling in, only because it's a word that we are more familiar with. Okay? Because our roots and solutions the same thing for us here. Yes? Okay? So here's the way people, and by people I mean me, here's the way I keep it separate in my head. How many axes are here? I have an x-axis and a y-axis, because in my problem I have an x variable and a y variable. So it's your graph is going to look like this. How many axes do I have right here? How many variables do I have? It's just an x-axis here. So two variables is going to give me a graph with two axes. One variable is going to give me a number line, just my x values. Fair enough? Okay? So, do we need to go over this? Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to is a solid line. Do you remember this from linear inequalities? Less than or greater than is a dotted line. We good with that? So we're going to graph it, we're going to test a point, and we're going to shade. Okay? Graph, test, shade. I'd like to tell you a little story about GTS to help you remember that, but there's not one. Okay? So let's just do it. Now, I don't want to use my calculator if I can help it right here, because it's going to take a whole lot less time if I can just do this with transformations. Dun dun dun. Where does this graph move compared to the parent? Left 1 and down 18. So there's my vertex, right? Is it parent function shaped? No, because of the 2, right? Okay, so instead of going over 1, up 1, I'm going to go over 1 and twice what I normally would. So 2, because twice 1 is 2, right? Instead of going over 4 and, instead of going over 2 and up 4, I'm going to go over 2 and twice what I normally would. So up 8. Instead of going over 3 and up 9, I'm going to go over 3 and up twice 9. So 18. And I know parabolas are symmetric. So over 1 this way and up 2, over 2 this way and up 8, and over 3 this way and up 18. Now, is this a solid parabola or a dotted parabola? How do you know it's a solid parabola? Has an equal sign, right? It's less than or equal to. So this is a solid line. So I graphed it. Now I have to test a point. Now this says test a point in each region. You can. But if I know one region is true, won't I know the other region is false? And where am I going to shade? On the true part or the false part? True part, right? So which is the easiest point to choose? Which is the easiest point to choose? How about 0, 0? How about the origin? Okay, let's choose that point right there. So in my equation up here, in my inequality up here, I want to put in a 0 for x and a 0 for y. Well, what is 0 plus 1? What's 1 squared? What is 1 times 2? What is 2 minus 18? So 0 is less than or equal to negative 16. True or false? That is false. This is false. If this part, like in this case, the inside of the parabola is false, guess where true is? Outside of the parabola. Once again, please don't get all OCD with me on shading. You don't have to shade every box, just shade the area. Yes, ma'am. I always choose 0, 0 if I can because it's easiest. I can't choose it if the parabola goes through that point or starts at that point, but I can choose it any other time. Okay? Any questions on how to do those? So what happens if there's only one variable? Like this. Oh, timeout. Can we go back real quick? I want to show you something really quick. Home, new document. Oh, go back. New document. What did I say? Oh, I said, never mind. Home, new document. No, I don't want to save the old stuff. I want a graph. See where my cursor is? I'm going to zoom in real quick. See where my cursor is? What if I deleted my equal sign? Because doesn't this have a less than or equal to? So if I deleted my equal... Ooh. What do I need? I need that one. Wait, I can put this on my calculator? What? 2. Quantity. X plus 1 squared minus 18. What? Isn't that what I just got? Now, what kind of teacher shows you how to do it in your calculator? After you get it the first time, okay? And you know I'll do it every time, okay? You know how to do it on paper, yes? Is it okay if I show you how to do it in your calculator? Yeah, you still have to have your graph. You still have to have the graph in the right place. This is just kind of a check to help you know you shaded in the right place. Deal? Okay? All right, now we can go on. Number 4. Only one variable. So what do you think we're going to solve for? X, right? We're going to solve for x. How am I going to solve this for x? What are my possible ways to solve that for x? I could graph it, see where it crosses the x-axis. I could factor. Or I could use the quadratic formula. But I'm afraid no one remembers what the quadratic formula is. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And so, now that we've sung our amazing and beautiful song, are we going to use it on this problem? Or would it be easier to factor? Yeah. What two numbers multiply to be negative 10 and add to be positive 3? What? Negative 2 and positive 5? So now that we have our factors, I'm going to kind of ignore this part for just a second. Okay? Just ignore it for just a second. X minus 2 equals 0 and x plus 5 equals 0. I need to know which one, what makes these factors 0. Okay? So I add 2 and I get x equals 2. I subtract 5 and I get x equals negative 5. Are you with me still? Okay. Now I need to graph this. But remember, this time I only have one axis, only the x values. So I have a negative 5 and I have a 2, and I really need my 0. This is not really the scale, is it? The 0 would be a little bit more to the right. But here's the deal. This is where I have to figure out where to shade, because I still have to shade, don't I? Okay? Now, is 2 included as part of my answer? Is negative 5 included as part of my answer? Why not? Because it's just a greater than sign. It's not greater than or equal to. So on my number line, it's an open circle and an open circle. I know it has something to do with the negative 5 and something to do with the 2. So here's what you have to know. My answer is either all the stuff in between these two numbers or all the stuff on the outside of these numbers. Fair enough? So I have to figure out which one it is. So test a region. How about if we choose 0? Isn't that the easiest? 0 squared is plus 3 times 0, still 0. So 0 is greater than negative 10. Yes? So that means this section where the 0 is part of the shaded area. So am I shading in between or outside? In between. And I am done. Okay? I can write my answer in symbols, which is a good idea. Questions? Okay, all we have left to do for as far as an example problem or sample problem is number 5. Okay? A garden is to be in the shape of a rectangle. Okay. The length of the garden must be 4 meters longer than the width. Guys, if the length of the garden must be 4 meters longer than the width, how wide is the garden? X. If we're basing our measurements of the length on the width, X is what we have for our width. So then tell me, how long is the length? X plus 4. Excellent. Okay, the gardener wants the area of the garden to be no blah, 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 blah. What about area? How do we find area of a rectangle? Length times width. Length times width. Width times length, same thing, right? Okay, so here's the area of this garden. The gardener wants the area to be no greater than 480 square meters. So I know these two things are related somehow. How are they related? Is that the sign you're saying? Is that right? Because that word says greater than, but you told me to write a less than. It can't exceed 480. It can get up to 480, but this cannot be any greater than 480. Fair enough? So what do I do to solve it? Because it says find all the possible dimensions. How do I solve this inequality? We could distribute. X squared plus 4x is less than or equal to 480. Now what? It's a quadratic with only one variable, so I need it to equal or be less than or equal to 0, right? So I subtract 480 from both sides, and I get x squared plus 4x minus 480 is less than or equal to 0. Now what? Factor or quadratic formula, right? Okay, so do you know the factors of 480? We want to write them all down? So can we just use our calculator and check stuff out? Sure. Okay, so here's my calculator. I need two numbers that multiply to be 480 and add to 4, right? Oh, it has to multiply to be negative 480, right? And add to be 4. So the numbers have to be opposite signs, and the bigger of the two has to be positive, right? Because I have a positive answer right here. So 480 divided by 2, I know 480 is divided by 2 because it's an even number, but are 2 and 240 close enough to give me a 4? So can I skip some? So I could go maybe 480 divided by 10. I know it's divisible by 10, but I still have 10 and 48. So can I skip some more? What about 480 divided by 15? Is that close enough? 15 and 32? What do you want to try? 20? Lucky guess. Oh, you already did it? Okay, good. So are these enough to give me a 4 when I combine them? If what's true? So x minus 20 and x plus 24. Okay so far? So I have x minus 20 equals 0 and x plus 24 equals 0. So I can add 20 to both sides and give x equals 20. I can subtract 24 from both sides and get x equals negative 24. Okay, volunteer. I need a volunteer to measure the length of the garden, the width of the garden when the width is negative 24 feet. What do you mean it's not even possible? Not unless we're talking about like feet behind us or feet below us. Are we talking about that here? No, not at all. Okay? That's not even a possible solution. So what does that mean? What's the width of the garden? 20? Is that the only width of the garden? Would 19 work? Would 18 work? 17? 16? 15? Oh, really? Negative 4? So what you're saying is under 20 and more than 0? Does 20 work though? 20 works. So it would be everything less than or equal to 20. And what about the other way? It has to be greater than 0? It can't be 0? You can't measure a width of 0? No. So what's that look like on a graph? Let's find out. Here's 0, here's 20. What's that look like? What do we have on the 0? An open circle. What do we have on the 20? A closed circle. And where's the solution? In between. Okay, guys, that's great telling me all about the width, but what did it ask for? All the dimensions, right? So the width is from 0 to 24, not including 0. So if that's the width, then what's the length? Did I write 24? Sorry, I meant to write 20. Thank you for fixing it. Thank you. What's the length? 4 is less than x plus 4, right? That's the length. Is less than or equal to 24, right? This being the width and this being the length. Because you know the width has to be 4 meters longer, don't you? Any questions? We good? You have 1 through 4 on this page and 5 through 9 on the back. So you're doing 1 through 9 of the practice problems. Okay?